All right, hello and welcome to this build guide for the Shock Farm Mage. Now this might be my new favorite build. We'll have to see going forward as I continue to play it, but this build is really strong and it seems to be catching on in the community, not just as a farming build, but also as an arena pusher. It's got a lot of really major benefits and not many downsides. So I think this one is going to be something that's going to be very strong for the rest of this patch. You're going to see a lot of people playing some iteration of it, not necessarily the same thing, but the general framework is really solid for this build. And so I think it's going to be around here at least until 0.7, 0.9, maybe beyond, depending on what happens in that patch. All right, so let's go ahead and get into what is so good about this build and also what are its weaknesses, if there are any. So the first thing is the damage on this is extremely good, both single target and AoE. So what we're doing here is we're going to use Elemental Nova as our AoE, and it does a lot of damage. And then we're going to use Lightning Blast with Convergence for single target, and it is an incredible single target damage. So we're actually using two damage types. That's a little unusual, two damage skills, I should say. A little unusual for my builds, but that's probably going to be more of a thing going forward. As the game progresses, it seems like that's going to be a more valuable approach than maybe it was a few patches ago. So that's what we're doing here. It works great. It's incredible. The movement speed on this is pretty good because we are using Storm Tide and they have about 30% movement speed on them. Plus we have teleport, so we move around pretty well. It's not super fast, but it's certainly good enough for a farm build with the amount of damage that it does. It's also really good on mana efficiency. When we need to, we can use focus and get all our mana back really quickly, but it doesn't actually burn mana all that quickly to begin with. Its other really big benefit is it stuns the hell out of everything. Like, even bosses get stun locked with this build. There's not really anything that I've come across in the monoliths that can't be stun locked. Some things are a little more resistant to it than others, but as long as you get a good second or two at most, everything's going to get stun locked in this build and in the monolith. So there's not a whole lot of danger. Once you've got something getting hit, you're pretty good to go. The only real danger is things that you aren't hitting. So that gives it a really big survivability bonus. Really kind of rounds out this build so that you can go deep into the monoliths. As far as negatives, there's really not much to speak of. The way I'm making this build, it's not the tankiest. You can make this build a lot more survivable. You can run this build or a build like this in Arena and do very well. But this particular one is going to be a little more on the damage and the stun side. And so there are mechanics in the monolith, certainly later on, that can one-shot you. There's still not too many. And if you use your Flame Ward appropriately, it'll be pretty rare that it'll happen as long as you're moving around quite a bit. But there are tankier ways of making this build, and there are certainly other builds that are tankier. So if you want the tankiest build to run monoliths, this won't be it, but the survivability on this, because of the stuns, is still pretty high. Okay, as far as build difficulty goes, I'm putting this in the intermediate. The actual playstyle is not very hard as long as you're good enough at switching between Elemental Nova and Lightning Blast when you are switching between AoE and single target. And as long as you know how to use Flame Ward and how to use Focus at the appropriate time, you're going to be good to go. But it's intermediate because there is some uniques that you need. There are some idols that are going to really make this stand out. So farming on this is pretty, it's not necessary except for one item. But once you start to build up your idols and the appropriate uniques or set items, it's going to really take off. So you're going to need Ashen Crown for sure, 100% you have to have it. And then Stormtide Boots and then some lightning damage idols are going to be pretty much just about required, at least to get to the right level. Ashen Crown's 100% required. The other ones are like 80, 90% required, I guess, if you can think of it that way. But because of all those things, I'm going to put this at about intermediate level. It's not advanced, but beginner's going to struggle, especially if they don't have Ashen Crown. It's not going to be a viable play style. Okay, as far as what to look for in future patches, we talked about this a little bit in my last stun build, just pure Lightning Blast one. Shock got a buff this patch. I said it was going to. It did. It wasn't really a buff so much as it was a fix. Shock is working properly on all enemies now when it wasn't before. And so there are enemies that could just like not get stunned, not get the elemental resistance taken off. That doesn't happen anymore. So the stun in this is incredible. I don't think it's going to stay that way. Like I said, there are other people in the community that are now playing some version of this and they're pushing it pretty high. I think they're going to push it much higher. This is probably one of the top builds now that they've nerfed the big Acolyte build that was pushing 1,000 waves. That doesn't do that anymore. And so I see this is going to be one of the next things that's going to get touched. There's going to be something done with Shock. It's just too strong right now. So bear that in mind if you decide to play this. I don't think Shock will always be this strong, but it is for now, and we probably have at least 4 to 6 weeks, I'd say, until the next patch. So you got plenty of time to play it if you want to. Okay, let's move on and talk about the actual skills here so you all can get a feel for how this build actually plays out. Well, let's start with the most important ones to actually make this build work. So we'll begin with Elemental Nova. For Elemental Nova, we're going to go ahead and take all lightning stuff. Everything's going to be lightning based. We don't have to take Arcane Projection to cast at target because we have that from the Ashen Crown, so we're good to go there. So we got 1 point here in Lightning Nova to actually start it. We're going to take 3 in Elemental Expanse, which allows us to take 1 in Luminary, which allows it to become a channeled ability. This is going to allow you to cast this 5 times per second, which is really, really fast. They all count as hits, so they all count as shocking, which allows you to stun very quickly. They also count as crits, so it's all really nice. We've got 4 points here in Spark Charges, so we can actually get Spark Charges to happen on the target, which just kind of increases the amount of hits we're getting even further. We're going to take 5 in Overcharge, 40% chance of an Overcharge, which gives a 200% shock chance. So more shock, yay. And then 5 in Ascendant Current to increase the shock effect by 400%, which is just a really large amount. You're going to notice that we have a lot of shock effect in this build, which allows us to do all those stuns very quickly. The other thing we're going to take is 1 in Charge Destruction for an increased base crit chance. That's really all we need. We're going to be at almost 100% crit chance if you build it similar to the way that I do. It's probably like 80, which is, you know, close enough for us. That will round out the Elemental Nova. Pretty easy, pretty simple to do. Next, we're going to go into Lightning Blast. This is your single target ability. We're going to start by going down here and taking, we can take 3 eventually in Storm Rager. You can start with 2 if you want. Get 2 in Chain Lightning, get 2 additional chains. And then we're going to take 1 in Convergence. That's going to allow all of the chains to hit the same target, and it's going to be a lot of hits. So let's see, we got the original hit, you got 2 here, you got 4 here. So that's 7 hits per hit, per cast. That's a ton of hits of Lightning Blast on the same target. From there, we're going to take 2, well, we're going to take the 4 in Arcing Power to get those additional chains there. We're going to take 2 in Crackling Speed, which gets us over to Shatter Shock, probably my favorite node in all of Lightning Blast, because it gives you 2 multipliers of 60%, as long as you're chilling and shocking. Of course, the shock is easy. We will get the chill from the passive tree. Then we'll take 4 in Overcharge, the double cast chance, the crit multiplier, all really nice. Crit is really good in this build, but double cast chance is really nice too. That gives us an additional chance to get even more hits on the single target. Okay, once we've rounded that out, let's go ahead and we'll talk about Flame Ward. There are actually quite a few ways to build Flame Ward. This one maximizes the ward. There are probably other ways that are at least as good. A lot of people have been taking Barrier lately for less hit damage. Feel free to take that. However you build Flame Ward, it's your defensive option, so as long as you're building at 4 defense, you should be pretty good. But in this particular case, we've taken 4 in Stalwart Defense. We've taken 1 in Warden Pulse for the knockback. Just in case we're getting hit by a lot of things like near us. It doesn't happen very often. You could actually go without this if you wanted to, but it's a nice little just extra layer of defense. 1 in Concentrated Shielding, which gets us up to Fuel the Flames for 2 of that, which gets us the dual Aegis, gives the additional charge. That's really valuable. Having 2 charges instead of 1 is very useful in this build. 3 in Dilation for duration mana efficiency. 3 in Energize for ward per second. And 2 in Recollection for ward retention. We've also taken 2 in Infusion for increased fire damage and then convert that to lightning. So we have 100% increased lightning damage. If you want to get the full 250, you certainly can. You can pull from the defense to get to the offense if you want to do even more damage. It's not really necessary. This build does a ton of damage as it is. But if you just want to go maximum damage, you know, just full-blown damage, this is one way to get quite a bit out of it. All right, once we've done that, once we've taken that, we're going to go ahead and look at our focus. Focus is Desperate Meditation for the 4% mana regen per missing mana, 4 mana Flooded for 100% mana regen. That's the big part of Focus. That's the stuff we need the most. But once we've got that, we've also got Energy Battery. Mana gained goes to lightning damage. You unleash a wave of lightning. That's kind of nice. That's really just getting us up to Energy Infusion. Haste after channeling. This is really nice for farming. Every second we've used our Focus, we get haste, so we run faster. So it just increases our clear speed in our monos. Then we got 5 in Everward for ward retention, 3 in Prison Barrier for armor and prots. You could actually reverse these if you want to, it'd be totally fine. It really just depends on how much ward you're building up and how much you want the armor and prots instead. Either one of these is going to be really similar in performance. And after that, we've got Teleport. This is more valuable than it might even actually seem at first. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the 4 in Plasma Protection. We've got 1 in Unexpected Copy, 1 in Decoy Position, and 2 in Uncontrolled Duplication. This gives us 4 mirror images that will attack targets and get their attention, taking the attention off of us. This is a very powerful option for sort of damage mitigation in a way. Like, you don't actually take damage because you're not getting hit. The only downside I've noticed to this is sometimes your mirror images get targeted with big attacks. If you don't see that and say you teleport into the wrong spot, an attack that was not meant for you all of a sudden hits you and you get one shot. Believe me, I know, I've had it happen. But as long as you're paying attention to that, this is generally a very good defensive option. You can also take 5 unstable duplicates to increase their duration so they're around a lot longer. Once you've taken that, we go down here and take Elemental Affinity for 40% increased elemental damage, which gets us to Elemental Dawn, Elemental Dusk, and Elemental Midnight, allowing us to cast Elemental Nova 3 times when we cast Teleport. Given how strong our Elemental Nova is, this is a nice little damage buff, stun buff. It allows you to stun things as you go through them. Just a really good utility plus and damage increase. All right, that rounds out all of the skills. Once you've got that set up, you've got a full toolkit. So let's go ahead and look at the passive tree. In the Mage tree, we're going to go ahead and take 8 in Scholar for the health and mana. We want this because we need that mana to hit 300 for the idols that we're going to take. That's going to give us a significant DPS boost. We're going to take 8 in Arcanist for the Intelligence Elemental Protection, and then we're going to take 10 in Knowledge of Destruction for crit strike chance and crit multiplier. That is all we need in Mage, but it is 26 points. Then we're going to go into Sorcerer, and the rest of the points will be here. 8 points into Calculated Destruction for significantly more spell crit strike chance. Mana Shell for that mana and also some armor, which is pretty nice. Wisdom for the intelligence and again the mana. Then we're going to take Whirling Snow. This is how we apply Chill on our Lightning Blast and get that additional multiplier. And Chill's nice as well because it slows enemies, so that's pretty good. Then we're going to take Crackling Precision. This is increased critical strike chance of 80. It's actually 160 because we're only using lightning skills. 5 in Arcane Obliteration for the 50% crit multi. We've got 8 in Chronomancy for Vitality, but really for the 32% shock duration, so we can stack shocks even further. Chill duration is nice as well, for that Lightning Blast. We got 5 in Spellslinger for the increased cast speed and adaptive spell damage. We've got 8 in Arcane Current. This is a huge one, 400% increased shock effect. And then we're going to round it out with Recollection and with Archmage. You can see I'm not there yet. This character is only 82, but it's going to go higher because I'm enjoying it so much, and it's my farmer. Once you've got those, you're up to, let's see, what, 82, 3, 4. You're up to almost 90. After that, you can kind of look around and find something else that fits, but most people aren't going to get to 90 anyway. This, by the way, would be a pretty good choice here. The increased stun chance with spells, elemental protection, and elemental damage is a really good note as well. That covers the passage. That was really quick. Yeah, there's not really a whole lot to talk about there. It's pretty easy. Let's start with the uniques, since those are the most important, like, build-defining types of items that you're going to need in the game, at least for one in particular. Ashen Crown is a must-have in this build. The reason why? Because it has that nice affix that says Elemental Nova is now cast at the target location. That allows you to not have to go into the fire part of Elemental Nova. You can skip that completely. I think it saves you about 5 points, which is huge. It's 25% of your total points just for taking this. On top of that, everything else about this is good. +2 to all attributes is fine. 51% of Fizz damage taken as fire allows you to focus more on elemental protection instead of your armor. That's good. The ward retention built into the base is good. The spell stun chance and increased stun duration are excellent for this build. They're really, really good. This isn't even a particularly well rolled one. Like, you get 20% stun duration and 80% spell stun chance and 80% Fizz damage as fire. This is gonna do a lot better. But even at this rate, it's an very, very good unique. Like, it's truly a build defining unique, which there aren't all that many of in this game, but this one definitely qualifies. The next thing we definitely want to have is Stormtide, a particularly well rolled Stormtide. These ones are near perfect. Chance to shock on lightning hit, increased shock effect, and increased movement speed are all great, as particularly the first two. And the you are shocked for 4 seconds when you stop moving sounds bad, but it only stacks 1. You only get 1 of these, so you lose -100 elemental protections and -100 stun avoidance, which you just have to make up for that in gear. That's all there is to that. Okay, the other thing I like in this build, but is not necessary, are 2 of the Invoker stack touch well rolled. Chance to shock on spell hit, increased shock effect are obviously really good for this build. Spell lightning damage is 2. This has all really good stats. Just notice that there's nothing in here outside of like your chance to stun that's going to give you defenses. So I am back and forth on whether or not I'd want to keep these long term. Chances are I'd probably prefer a really well rolled rare with good protections in general on it over this. And get stun chance on the base on rings, and then you can roll defenses. And I think if you want to push the highest level of monoliths, that would probably be better. But again, I haven't tested it, so I'm not entirely sure. Okay, as far as the rest of the stats on your gear, so for your staff and other places where it qualifies, crit multi and spell crit are great, but also lightning damage, spell damage are great. Elemental damage is the next tier down from that because it doesn't roll as high. Mana, if you don't have over 300, this is a great place to get it. Also, make sure you're using a staff. Staff is just going to do way more damage, and you don't need the additional base crit that you would get from the offhand. You're definitely going to want chance to shotgun hit on your staff. As far as like your general things that you're going to want, number 1, you want set glancing blow. Number 2, you want crit avoidance. Then after that, you're looking at things like intelligence, elemental prots, your vitality based prots. If you roll a really good Ashen Crown, you don't need too much armor. If you don't roll a really good one, you'll want to put some armor on there as well. So this is mostly being built for protections. It's not a war generator, so to speak. So protections are really going to be powerful, but not before your glancing blow and your crit avoidance. So outside of protections, there are 2 other areas you should be looking at. One of them has to do with the shock. So shock chance and shock effect are both very powerful. If you can get large amounts of them, that's only going to serve your purpose even more. A good place to get that is on the chest piece. I believe it also can roll on the necklace and probably a few other places. So keep a lookout for that. Shock chance as well is very good. Once you've got that in a place where you're comfortable, you can start to look at some offensive options. This build really doesn't need much at all, if anything, outside of the passive and the skill tree and your weapon. But you can always look at lightning damage. You can always look at spell chance, spell critical chance, and crit multiplier. I'd probably go with, if you're happy with how often you're critting, crit multiplier, spell chance, or lightning are all pretty close. It really just depends on how much of each one you have. But if you can just find a good item that has any of those on it, you should be good to go. All right, let's talk about idols. These are really powerful for the build because you can get the increased lightning damage doubled if you have over 300 max mana, and these can roll really high. These will roll up to 50%. So that's 100% if you have 300 max mana. These ones down here roll a little lower. They roll to 33%, that's 66%, and also gives you a little extra slot over here. So definitely want those. Increased critical strike chance lightning skills is a nice extra. Chance to gain ward when hit is a good little defensive extra as well. Also, Elemental Nova area can be pretty nice as well, since Elemental Novas are big AoE. So those are all kind of the things you're going to want to look for. You see I've got more ward when hit here. Those are basically the 4 stats I went with. Those are the 4 that I recommend. All right, last but not least, the rotation. It's pretty easy. So anytime you have an AoE situation where you have multiple enemies, Elemental Nova, cast it. Anytime you have a single target, someone that's beefy, got a lot of health, cast Lightning Blast. That's your damage rotation right there. Use Flame Ward when you need it. Whenever you feel like you're going to get hit by something that's strong, usually try to use it before you get hit by that thing. Use Focus when you need mana, and then Teleport around when you need to do that. But you can also use Teleport to hit enemies and shock them with a pretty strong shock. That's all there is. This is a very easy rotation. The only thing that's somewhat challenging sometimes about this is, well, do I use Nova because there are a couple of enemies there, or do I use Lightning Blast because it hits a lot harder on a single target? Maybe there's a really big boss in there. Usually I prefer Nova because we can shock more things in that scenario, but it really will be kind of like your, preference on that, or your decision making. Maybe there's something that's especially threatening. I've definitely had that happen, where there's something that's like very threatening in a group of things where there's some things that are not very threatening, and I Lightning Blast down the very threatening thing, and then I finish off with Nova. That's it. That's all there is really to think about. Think about that. Think about your reactions with Flame Ward, and once you've done that, you're good to go. All right, thank you so much for watching. Really enjoyed this build. I really think you're going to enjoy it too. I think it's going to be a very fun build for most people. Let me know how you feel about it, how you like it. If there's something that you found that maybe you think works better, I'd like to know about that as well. If you want to come hang out and watch me make builds, or help me make builds even, offer your suggestions in real time. I stream 5 to 6 days a week. Would love to have you. Come hang out, chat, join the community. The LE community is amazing. I also have a Discord where we talk about stuff, where we talk about LE builds. We just talk about LE in general, even other games. Was playing Torchlight 3 last week. Love to have you there as well. And I also announce when I'm going to be streaming there and new videos. So feel free to join that as well. All right, thank you so much. Enjoy your time in Last Epoch. Enjoy the build. I'll see you again real soon.